Okay. Good stuff. We live, man.
All right, gentlemen, let's do it, man. So we'd like to welcome you to episode 3 of Brothers, Y'all Good. My name is Mike W. I'm here with my co-host, Nathan S. And we've got a couple of guests with us tonight that we're going to have a conversation about Black men's mental health. We're going to talk about what they've been up to. We're going to talk about the meetup that they've got scheduled a week from today and get into all sorts of stuff. So, Jason, I'm going to turn it over to you real quick, and then we're going to come back and chop it up.
Man, hey, welcome. Thanks so much, Mike. I'm excited about tonight. It's good to see these two brothers here. We got something really exciting tonight to talk about, and we're grateful to be here. And so just as a reminder, Brothers Y'all Good is more than just a podcast. It's a real talk space where Black men can come through, open up, and get honest about mental health. This show dives deep into the stuff that matters. We're talking about faith, fatherhood, fellowship, and all the ups and downs of navigating life as a Black man today. From dealing with stress, anxiety, and trauma to breaking through the stigma that's been holding us back, this podcast keeps it real with personal stories, expert advice, and practical tools to help you find peace and strength. This ain't just talk. It's about building each other up, sharing experiences, and creating a healthier, stronger community. So pull up, tune in, and let's have the conversations that heal. Together, we're breaking the silence, overcoming barriers, and helping every brother to be able to say, yeah, brother, I'm good. Turn it back over to you, Mr. Mike.
All right, well, we're going to start as we always do. Jason, let me ask you, brother, you good?
Man, I'm doing good. You know, it's been a long week. We had all these fires here in San Diego, but by the grace of God, I'm good, and I'm ready for. I'm prepared for tonight. So all is well. How about you, brother? You good?
I'm good, and I can't move on without talking about Sunday, right? From Sunday morning to Sunday night, you and I got a chance to hang together. So tell the people a little bit about Sunday morning. I'll talk a little bit about Sunday night.
Well, you know, we messed around and went to church, and you know, we attend Bayview, and we're crazy Pastor Brooks, and we got in there, and Pastor Smokey Norfolk, who is a singer, was at church on Sunday. And I don't know how this brother does it at 5'3" or whatever, you know what I mean? But he packs a mean punch, and every word that he said was very useful and necessary. And so I was extremely full after Sunday's service. And then we got a chance afterwards to go and kind of have some personal time with him and talk with him. And as I told Pastor Brooks, just super grateful for the love that he shows myself and he shows you, and just super grateful. So that was an incredible Sunday that led into Sunday night where, So
Sunday night, we got a chance to celebrate. Jason just finished getting his college degree that had been many years in the.
Congratulations, man.
We had a
graduation. Congratulations.
Self-selected people that he wanted to celebrate with. I was happy to be one of the people there, but he had judges and elected officials and politicians, people that know him for years, and family members.
Well connected.
It was amazing. It was amazing. So I was telling them earlier, it's nice to have that experience where we get to celebrate somebody in their life, right? Rather than waiting until they've passed and gone. And right, Jason, it worked secretly and silently on this passion work of his. And it was an opportunity to really come together as part of the community and just celebrate the work that he does and what an amazing person he is. So I was grateful to be there to chop it up with everybody there. And we just had an amazing time telling stories about him and others and celebrating the good work that he had put on there. So I want to thank you for that, Jason. I want to talk about tonight, though, because when we were talking about this podcast, we were trying to figure out what type of people we wanted on as guests. And I had a list of people that I thought about. Jason had a list of people that he thought about, and we tried to look at our list, right? And the two brothers that are with us tonight are on each of our lists. And so I'm going to let Jason go ahead and introduce Ojore. I'll go ahead and introduce Nate, and then we'll take it from there.
So first of all, thank you for the compliments on Sunday. And just for those of y'all that might be mad, why didn't I get it? The party was not my idea. You know what I'm saying? So it's not my idea. So don't be out here like, man, you never. Like, I get it. Like, I already know. Man, come on, man. Just let me live my best life. You feel me? Thank you, Tony. Godly greetings to you too, Dr. Lamar. Man, appreciate you. And Tyree, man, it's good to see you. We'll see you soon, good sir. So this is a real special moment for me. Me and Ojore go back way back. Ojore probably, when I met Ojore, he was probably 14, 15, something like that, 16, 17, just young. He was a youngster. And growing up in the neighborhood when we lived in Skyline, Ojore lived in Skyline. And what I will tell you without, he can feel free to, we'll dig a little bit into it. But what I'll tell you is what he is now is there could have absolutely been another pathway. This was not the destiny that a lot of people saw for Dre Boy when he was 14, 15 years old. I'm gonna just tell you that. And I used to be his barber, and we had some real cool time to really have some real conversations. And one thing I will say about Ojore, you have always been a stand-up man. I'll tell you that right now. I don't know what the streets had planned for you, but you've always been a stand-up brother, man. And I could not be prouder. And Mike will tell you, when we had to break our list down, and we talked about this last night, and I'll say this in the end. We had 10 people, and we had to break it down to 5. We were just going to start with 5 and see what happened. And with no questions asked, Ojore was one of my 5, 100%. I don't know all of what you've been up to, but what I do know is what you're doing right now is not what a lot of folks thought you would be doing. And I feel like that needs to be talked about. So I'm proud of you, man. I'm super grateful and humbled to know you. So much love for you, man. And I'm glad that you are where you are right now. And welcome to Brothers Y'all Good.
Ashe, thank you. Appreciate it.
Back to you, Mike.
All right. And Nate, I had the pleasure of meeting him when he was a pledge for my fraternity, our fraternity now, the most honorable Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. We just celebrated yesterday our 46th chapter anniversary. 46 years ago, January 27th, 1979, that me and 6 strong brothers pledged the charter line at San Diego State. Fast forward another 30 years, I see Nate with his line brothers pledging at the same chapter that I started. Reach out to all of them, right? Tell everybody the same thing I told Nate. Hey, get at me if you want to know what's going on, because I'm going to try to be here to support you. So Nate was one of the brothers that said, I hear you. I got you. Hey, Judge, let me come up to North County. Let's go out to lunch. I said, lunch is on me, of course. We went out to Old Spaghetti Factory and got a chance to talk. I got to learn a lot about who he was and who he was becoming. And then he had plans. He was going to go travel overseas and teach English as a second language and do all sorts of stuff. And then he came back here and we reconnected. I got to meet his lovely woman, who's now his lovely wife, Diamond. Got to be at their wedding, hang out with them. We get a chance to get together from time to time, not as often as he or I would like, to talk about what's going on with our lives. But I try to share whatever wisdom I've acquired from my 65 years here on earth to try to guide him and advise him along the way. So we talk about God and life and relationships. And he's just that brother that's doing things. And so after we started the podcast, he sends me a flyer saying, yo, if you could just tell people on your podcast about what we're doing. And I see the flyer and I'm like, cool, Black men's experience. Hey, that sounds pretty dope. It's going to be at Malcolm X Library. That's outstanding. Wait, let me see who's down there with Nate. Wait, Ojore. Oh my gosh. I got to send this to Jason because that's oh my gosh. I didn't even know this. Nate had already hooked up to do something that's so powerful. So I wanted to have you guys on. I reached out to Nate immediately and I said, yo, we already talked about Ojore. I already told him about you. We need to get you guys on. I mistakenly thought that was going to be last week. Jason reminded me, no, that's going to be this week. So I'm glad that you guys both took time out of your day, because y'all both working, man. Y'all working in the field, trying to advise and counsel people what's going on. Nate just got his master's degree. So I'm so proud of my brother, my fraternity brother, and my spirit in the heart doing this work. So I'm glad to have both of you on. And so, Jason, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Let's get it in.
Well, as you said, it was very unique that we had these conversations the very day after we talked about Ojore. This flyer comes about this event, and we talk about this event and say, man, this is exactly part of what we've been talking about. And I'd love to get into talking a little bit about what you brothers are actually doing, and to let folks know the type of space that y'all are creating. But before we do that, why don't we hear from you brothers? And Ojore, why don't you take a second to just let folks know, what do you do? What do you do for work? Tell us a little bit about who you are and let everybody know before we dig into the topic.
Before I start, for the brothers who might be watching, what's good? Y'all good?
Yeah.
It's an honor to be here. And so my name is Ojore Lateef Bushfan, longtime resident of Skyline Hills. I'm currently blessed to be in a space where I'm a licensed therapist, and Jason couldn't have been more right. That was not my trajectory. I wanted to play baseball, but I wasn't dedicated. I wasn't focused. I had one foot in, trying to bang and do that stuff and, chase females, and I wasn't focused or disciplined. And so, the universe has a way of kind of bringing you to your purpose. And I listened, I saw, and I met the right people I was supposed to meet. And so current day, I've been licensed as a marriage and family therapist since 2019. And that's huge because, as my brother Nate will know, that process is something else. And for anybody else who's watching, who's a licensed clinician, you know that process is quite long. Going through grad school, doing 3,000 hours, 2,000 hours, and then taking all those exams. And so currently I am a full-time mental health counselor at Grossmont College. I'm on what's called a tenure track, which means at some point I can speak my truth and not get fired. I can talk my ish and, not get reprimanded too much.
Yes, sir.
And so in that capacity, I'm meeting with students of all walks of life. I'm also part of some of the student groups on campus, and trying to run groups, also bringing different modalities of wellness like sound healing, and things like that. And I'm also a part-time clinician with the Weight Room, which is a virtual group practice where we meet with Black males, both adolescent and adult, virtually. And so a lot of my time is spent in this role as a therapist. But outside of that, I'm really into sound healing and sound therapy. I've gotten into that and have gotten certified. And so I do my best to integrate that into my work, because it's another way that I found is really impactful in working with folks. And I see in the chat, yes, Umoja is at Grossmont.
Thank you, man. Well, thank you for that, Ojore. That's dope, man. And I'm just meeting Nate, but I for some reason I feel like, I don't know, you just have I don't know, man. You know what I'm saying? I guess the term is like a energy, but there's just something I feel about you I already know you're a dope dude, and I heard a lot about you from Mike for sure. And congratulations to the both of you on your chapter's 46th anniversary. And just for those that don't know, Mike is a charter member of the chapter at San Diego State. So congratulations to you, men, on the 46th anniversary of your chapter. Really dope. So Nate, hey, if you could give us let us know, like, who are you and what do you do? What do you bring to the space?
Most definitely. So first of all, I want to say thank you for having me. I know Ojore really well, and I know Mike really well. And Jason, I know this is the first time we're meeting, but I can't help but feel like I'm a family, you know, and I mean that. I don't say things I don't mean. Mike and Ojore know that about me. But,
Yes.
you know, I had an opportunity to watch the first episode. I didn't get a chance to watch the second yet, but what you shared about telling on yourself, man, that really spoke to me, man. And the relationship you have with a gentleman that you could be honest with, that really, really spoke to me. And so I'm really, it really brings me joy to see what you brothers are doing. And so when I saw Mike's Facebook about what he was doing, I was like, that's amazing, right? And so I think the beautiful thing about me and Mike's relationship is, you know, even though we don't talk as much as we'd like, as he said, we always seem to be on the same page. And so I was just the divineness of just him starting this at this time. You know? And as you mentioned, he is a charter member of the illustrious and oh so lethal Lambda Iota chapter. And so that means that our chapter wouldn't be here without him. And so Mike is just a good brother. And so I remember that conversation at the old spaghetti factory, man. And, you know, he saw something in me when I didn't see it in myself. And I think this is probably something we'll talk about, but that guidance and that love and that expectation is important. But so as far as for myself, I'm also born and raised in San Diego, California. You know, me and my family, we moved over all over. So, you know, I went to 7 or 8 different schools throughout my life. And so I can't claim any one part of San Diego because we moved so much. And so those were part of the challenges I had growing up. And so, you know, I graduated from 2020 in the same program as Ojore, the community-based block program. Got my master's of science in counseling. And as of April of 2024, I received my licensure as a licensed professional clinical counselor. Yeah. And so right now I have my practice. Yeah. So Nathan Klein Counseling and Consulting. And so that's something that I'm really proud of because as Ojore said, they don't make it easy. They put up a lot of barriers and they try to weed it out. But with support like Ojore, we talked a lot. I was able to get that licensure process finished and completed. And now I'm doing the work that I love. And in addition to what I do as a psychotherapist, I'm also on the tenure track at Mesa College, where I work with first generation college students. So we have a number of programs serving students who have experienced foster care, students who have been impacted by the justice system, borderless scholars for students who are undocumented, and just students who are struggling and come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. So you know, I help guide them and give them the tools they need to be successful, you know, at the college level. And when people ask me, you know, what do I do? What I tell them is I help people discover, you know, the truth of who they really are. And part of knowing that is also knowing who you're not. And so it's kind of helping people get real about, you know, who they are, who they want to be, and sort of, you know, again, who they're not. Because a lot of times we walk through life and people tell you you're this, you're that, and we just accept it. And that's the conditioning that we take on. And so that's what I do for a living is I help people discover the truth of who they are.
You up there with Dr. Hands. You up there with Dr. Hands.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Another CB beer as well. So it's a great program. So
yeah, you got a dope sister out there that's the president.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, how about, I mean, go ahead, Mike. Why don't you
I was just going to say, so Nate, talk a little bit more just for a second, because I love that phrase you use, trying to help people decide who they're not. Just talk for a second about that, because I think we've stumbled on something that we don't talk about. We often talk about, like you said, who we are.
Yeah. Right.
Talk about who they're not.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I'm not a young white boy. That's easy for me to say.
You're not?
That's not, but that's not what you mean. Tell me a little bit about what you mean.
Yeah, so I think for me as a black man, you know, you're always told, you know, there's messages you get as a black man, especially as you navigate systems of higher education, spaces that weren't designed for you. And so I think a lot of my life, a lot of the frustration that I experienced that I didn't have the language for is like, people are trying to make me something that I'm not, you know, like, you know, I come from greatness. I don't come from anything other than that. And so I always knew that subconsciously, but I had people telling me, you know, you're not college material. You know, I had counselors tell me, I don't think college is for you. You should, you know, take drama and PE. And so those sent messages, right, that my worth to society as a ball player or an entertainer. And you know, those are things that we're told is like, this is who you are. But really what you're telling me is who I'm not, right? Because, you know, if I know who I am, then I get to define that for who I am. And so when you come and try to tell me who I'm not, I say, well, that's, you know, I am who I am. And so I think a lot of times, again, as Black men, people put so many things on you, right? You're aggressive, you know, different things. And so when you know who you are, that really gives you the ability to walk through life with confidence and the self-esteem. And so much of that is getting involved with community that can help you really see who you are. And again, someone tries to tell you who you're not, you can say, I'm sorry, that's not who I am. And, you know, I wish I could tell you that, you know, when you do that, that it's all roses, but it's not, right? Because, you know, the society, they want to keep you in a box. And we live in a world that says we want you to show up authentically. And then when you do, they say, oh, wait, hold on, not like that. That's a little too much, right? And so those are some of the things that I've learned is really helping people get clear on who they are. And then again, like, you know, who they're not. So that's a little bit about that.
Amen.
I love
Jason.
it. You know, so go ahead, Ojore.
If I can just spin the block on that, I really appreciate that phrase. I really, and I hadn't heard it that way. So, you know, thank you, Nate, for speaking that into existence. Because what came up for me was realizing who I wasn't in the context of being a banger. Like, I think I had to experience a number of funerals and a number of just stuff to realize, like, you know, that's not my lane. I can dip my foot in it, right? But like, that's not for me full time. And I think once I met the people who I was supposed to meet, you know, as Nate mentioned, being in community, I think for me, the community was the people I met, like when I was at Bell Middle School working for the San Diego Unified School District. Folks saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And that right there was kind of the turning point where it's like, oh, okay, there's some things people see about me. I don't necessarily get it. But then like years later, I would realize, oh, I'm empathic. I listen. I try to understand. Like those are like some helpful things. And so, you know, I met certain people who helped me to get to where I am. And so that community piece is so valuable. And I think last night I had mentioned how for me, I want to be prepared for when I'm that person for somebody else, when I can help them. And I think that I'm already doing that right now as a therapist in certain ways. But if I wouldn't have met certain people along my path, it could look totally different. And so I definitely, you know, resonate with what they were talking about in the context of community, because, you know, there's this narrative for like, you know, males in general, but for Black men, this whole idea of like the self-made man, you know, I did this on my own, you know, I did this. And a lot of that is a bunch of BS because not many of us really do things without the help of somebody in some capacity. And so I really appreciate, you know, the idea of community, because I know without it, things would be really different for me.
That's right. Yep.
Amen.
Speaking of community, one of the things I'd love to do, you know, what kind of kicked the ball off with this relationship, with us even being here right now, I will say, I just have to say this because I think it's so important as we're waiting for things, right? As an idea comes up for a person, oftentimes, you know, in my journey, my spiritual journey, so just, I mean, full transparency, I'm a Christian. My identity is shaped by what the scripture says, right? That's my, and we can get into like what it means to deconstruct this colonized version of Christianity and all that. We can get into that at another time. But one of the things that I realized along this journey is sometimes you just have to start. And so I'm so grateful that when Mike said, hey, let's start this podcast 3 weeks ago, and something kind of traumatic had happened. And so I just told him, man, I'm really not ready to do it. And he said, you know, there's always going to be something that's going to get in the way. And before you know it, it's going to be March and there's going to be a whole bunch of things happening. Let's just start. And that's what we did. And that's what made it so beautiful with him getting the flyer the next day, is because that flyer came the next day after we started the first day. And we had talked about all this stuff, creating these spaces and community, this is what reminded me of this, Ojore. And we got this flyer, and that's what led us to where we are today. And so we're here today because there was an idea that started, and we just by faith just started. We just began, and we didn't know we still don't know what we're doing. I'm sure you're supposed to send out reminders and all this stuff. We don't know. We're just walking because we believe that there was something that Jim Rohn said. There's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And so what I would love to just kind of dive into right now is, what is that flyer about? What is it that you all are going to be doing February 4th at Malcolm X Library? One of y'all want to take it and kind of go and just let us know. And Tyree just said, we're here due to the flyer. So we shared the flyer. And he said, we're here due to the flyer. So, man,
the Tyree.
And I wanted to tell Alonzo, you know where Skyline Hills is. Don't play. That's what Skyline turns into when you get a master's degree. Stop playing. That's what the line turns into when you get a master's degree and you finish your licensure. You move from Skyline to Skyline Hills. You know what it is. Yeah. But go ahead. One of y'all want to talk about what is the space when we're talking about community and talking about this? What is it that you brothers have created that we're so excited to support you in?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, it's kind of funny because it started similarly that you mentioned is like, the idea really it's, we wanted to create something that wasn't available in San Diego. Right. And there's a space for this and it's needed. And so this is something Ojore, again, as a very good friend of mine in the same field, we talk all the time. And so we really wanted to create something because we saw that there was a need. And so we got together and we came up with this idea to get brothers together. And we came up with the name, and I'll be honest, Ojore actually came up with the name, Nurturing Brotherhood, a wellness space for Black men. And I want to say that again, Nurturing Brotherhood, a wellness space for Black men. And because what we realize is brotherhood is really missing from our world, and particularly for Black men. And so community is something that's missing. And so we really wanted to create a space where brothers could come together and show up as their authentic selves. And because something that gets under my skin is they say, there's a stigma with mental health in the Black community. And I always push back on that because I come from a more of a systems approach of, well, is there a stigma? And if so, why is there? And typically we say because Black men don't want to go to therapy. But I know myself and many others have the experience of when we go to therapy, we don't have an experience that the therapist can relate to. And so what happens is they share all these corny examples of, this and that, and we can't relate to it. And also not understanding the cultural aspect of what we bring. So we come from collectivistic cultures for the most part, but I don't like a lot of times therapy isn't responsive to that. So, as therapists, we wanted to create a space where, Black folks could get introduced, not exposed, but introduced to what it's like to be in this kind of a setting. And so it's not a clinical setting per se, but we definitely do things that are adjacent. And then we help get connected to resources. And so, we have talked about topics all the way from the election to our most recent upcoming one is going to be on the stages of change. Right. And so helping people get the language and the psychoeducation they need to affect change in their lives. And I know Ojore, he has some things to share as well. But, those are some of the things that we wanted to create and that we are creating.
I say.
That's good stuff.
To add to what Brother Nate has said, it came together. Sometimes I'll be in the world kind of talking out to the ancestors and the creators like, I want to do this. I want to do that. It'll be dope to do this. I want to get back into facilitating groups. And then, I let it kind of go into the atmosphere. And then sooner or later it comes back like, here's an opportunity. And so when, Brother Nate approached me, I was like, it's a dope idea, because a part of my work has been wanting to move in community spaces. There's something about what's been coming up for me in my work that's been wanting to be more communal in the community or community based, and not so much in institutions or clinics. And I think that's the beauty of the group, that it's in the community. Brothers show up right off of work. I mean, they don't got to get fancied up. They can just bring themselves in. And so thinking about like, what is this space for me? And Nate and I have talked about this. It's a growth space. It's a space for growth. And that growth can be whatever the brother comes in wanting to change. And that's why the next group, we're going to be looking at, stages of change, because we've talked about like change and why change can be difficult at times. I think we often talk about change as if it's this kind of rosy thing that happens magically. And we don't talk about like what happens when you change. There's some things that you give up when you change, whether it's
Mm,
behaviors, coping
mm,
skills,
mm,
ideas.
mm,
And for some of us, there's a strong connection to those things. So when we let them go,
mm,
there can be some loss and grief behind that,
mm,
and when you change, it's like putting on new shoes, right? You got to break them in, you got to get comfortable with them, and it can be quite awkward. And there can be isolation in change, right?
mhm,
Because if
mm,
you've been in the world a certain kind of way, and that's how you've gotten like certain relationships or friendships, and if you have started to change, those relationships could fall off, and then you kind of like with less connection, less friends, you might be feeling more isolated. So I really appreciate this group that we're a part of. You know, I think we're still kind of in the initial phase, in the
Mhm.
sense where group members are getting to know each other, getting to know us and our styles. As Nate said, we're having some really good conversations that I think sometimes Black men aren't having with each other. They
Mhm.
may have, with their partners, or they may have it in a way where it's kind of watered down, or like, maybe over a couple drinks, but we're in a space where we're showing up and inviting conversations about, masculinity, about being in relationship with other men, and being aware of how, and some of us have been raised around, you know, affection towards men as being, gay or homosexual. And so Black men navigating that, how do we be in relationship with each other and not, be afraid, of what it might look like from the outside? And, talking about the father wound, many of us are navigating tough relationships with fathers, mothers, family members, and I think one of the things that comes up is like wanting to be heard. And I
Mhm.
think to me, that's one of the things that I hope that every member gets, is that they feel heard. Because in my experience, like feeling heard is almost like winning the lottery sometimes. Like you
Yeah.
really hearing me out. I don't have to sugarcoat it. I don't have to make it appeasing to you. Like I can really, be transparent, and you can hold that. Doesn't mean you have to agree with me or side with me, but you can hold that.
Mhm.
And so, my hope is that, group members who are showing up are able to, you know, find something that they want to be a bit different in their lives, and can work that out in the space, because that's what the space is for. It's like an experimental space, right? You come in, let me try this out, let me try that out, and get feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to just add one thing too, because it's very important that I do this, because also two very important people that played a really critical role were Christopher Seaford, my barber. He goes by Chris, and Reverend Mark Ritchie, who goes by Big
Hmm.
Ups. And so I'm not sure if folks are familiar, but there's a barbershop that's been in the community for years called Big Cuts, right off of Euclid Avenue. I go there every week to get my hair cut. And the barbershop is one of the few safe spaces for Black men. And so I'm in the chair. I'm sharing my story with Chris and Bigums, and you know, they had this vision for a while, and they said, "Yo, like Nate, what you doing is really special, and you know, we want something for our community because we need it." And to be quite frank with you, you know, they're a huge part of our of the reason we're having this group, and they really pushed me to do it, and I was nervous, right? Like, but they kept asking me, "What's up? What's up? What's up?" But they just said, "Hey, send the flyer." Like, we start like, and so I just want to really shout those two brothers out because they're really a really critical heartbeat of the community. And you know, they're a large reason why we're doing this. And I think it just really speaks to really the grassroots nature of this group. Because as Ojore, we're big on, you know, this isn't for us to come and be put on, you know, in a pulpit. Really, this is really for the community to come and be in the pulpit, so to speak, right? And so this is their platform, this is their space, so we co-create this. So we try to do what we can to collapse any sort of, you know, power differential, because they're the author of their own lives and the experts of their own experience, right? And so that's a critical piece of what we do, because a lot of times we can get like high and mighty, and you know, that turns a lot of people off. And so I know Ojore would agree. Oh, look at that. Somebody said Biggins was my barber. So yeah, so I imagine there's a lot of people, because again, they're a big part of the community, but that's a huge element of our group, because we want to give you the language to really get an understanding of what's going on in your life. So yeah.
It's real interesting, just real quick, and turn it over to you, Mike. You know, I've been a licensed barber since 1995. Yeah. And I can tell for a fact that there are things that I know about people that I will take to my grave. There's something I'm telling you right now. You talking about getting a tea, and I know these ladies think when they go to the shop that y'all really doing something, but you ain't doing nothing. Hey, man, don't sleep on the fellas, man. Hey, and I'm not even talking about just doing dirt. I'm talking about
you really
having conversations where cats is like, man, put the hot towel on my face. I don't want folks to see me up in here in tears. Really, like, it's, you know, believe it or not, getting a haircut is a very vulnerable space, right? I mean, the nature of getting a haircut is vulnerable, because thank God, unless you get older, the difference, I used to tell people, hey, if you don't like the cut, which, you know, I didn't have that problem myself. I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying? The philosophy at our barbershop is, if your hair ain't becoming to you, you ought to be coming to me. You know what I'm saying? But I used to tell people, man, hey, go to the barber of your choice, man, because the difference between a good haircut and a bad haircut is 2 weeks, right? So, hey, you know what I'm saying? But I'll tell you, the amount of intimacy in those conversations.
Yes,
I agree,
sir.
Tyree. Barbers are therapists in their own right, and I think the truth is that many of the people that we spend time with are therapists, and anywhere that you go, kind of on a regular basis, where people can begin to see patterns and the way that you typically show up, and even your friends, and in the hood, people show up places and people know you're not really doing well. But it's interesting how a lot of those spaces where we're well known, because we go there quite a bit, a lot of those people have the opportunity to be therapists. It's just that we have professionalized what it means to be in community. We have stripped the community away from being able to solve a lot of the problems that are happening within our community. We've used these big terms and, you know, things like that, right? So I think that's really, really interesting. And I'm grateful that your barbers pushed you, much like what Mike pushed me when he had this idea. So we are here because Mike had faith and I followed him. You both are here because you had faith and followed the idea that y'all had. So it's interesting how faith plays a huge part in the success that we have in our lives. So, Mike.
Well, there's so much I want to follow up on. Let me start here, though. So I know we got a bunch of brothers and sisters watching us live now. for those that might want to show up next week, right,
Hey.
and be part of this community that we talked about, show up in person. Man, if you can imagine people are scared to do the roles that you guys have already started to do, there are probably some brothers that are scared to just show up and be in the space. So help. Let me go to Nate first. Nate, try to give them a understanding of what they'd be walking into if they're there next Tuesday. Because Jason and I plan to be there. So we want to be there to support. We want to be there to be a part of. We want to be there to talk about it later. But help some folks that are checking this out, that have realized, man, I like what they're talking about. I like that they're talking about mental health stuff. I like that they're talking about community and sharing and being safe spaces. We talked about that last night, Ojore, making sure your space is safe. We want our space to be safe so that people can be what they are. But what can brothers expect? If I show up to next Tuesday, y'all going to put me on the spot? Is it going to be like an AA meeting where I got to stand up and go, hey, my name is Mike. I'm a black man and I work and I need to share some stuff. So what can I do? Because I want people to get a sense so they can feel comfortable going to this place that they're not a part of yet, but we want them to feel can be a home for them. So Nate, once you start, Ojore, why don't you follow up?
Yeah. So I'm really glad that you said that, Mike, because the reality is a lot of people probably have that thought process of like, what are they going to make me do when I go? Like, am I going to be forced to share or whatever it may be? So really what we want to do is, again, cultivate a space where brothers feel safe to share, on their own time. And so, and we do it like we do in our community where, you can get in where you fit in. Right. And so there's no pressure to come and say something. And in fact, many brothers come and say, listen, I just want to be here to be in the space because I have never had this before, and I want to know what it feels like. And so what really, I think what I love about group counseling is you don't have to say anything to get something, right? You come to individual counseling and you got to talk, right? It's just you. But how many times do we learn and glean from the experiences of others, right? And in fact, it's by listening that I learn more than I do by speaking. And so that is what I could say to anyone who may be afraid to come is, number one, that fear is telling you something, because the best things in life are on the other side of fear, as some of us know, or some of us know. And so I think that's an indicator that maybe this is something that I should look into, because fear is not always a bad thing. Sometimes it tells us, hey, we're moving in the right direction. And so I was really share that to anybody that may be having some fear of what to expect. And one of the things we do, we open the space by sharing ground rules, so you know what to expect, right? And I think that's really important for folks too. And so really, for me, it's very special, because a lot of the times I like to ask is, how many of you have experienced something like this before? And 95% raise their hands that they haven't. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, is create something, again, that we don't always have access to, right? And so I would say, if you're hesitant about coming, is just give it a shot, see how it feels. There's no pressure, and I think it's something that can really, create some real positive change for you in your life.
I love it.
Nice.
What's your sort of your perspective, Ojore, about the space?
Forgive me if I repeat some things that my brother Nate said, because he said it so well. I could just be like, everything Nate said. I would say that for someone who is thinking about coming to group, I'd invite you to, as my she mentor, Dr. Nona Butler-Berg, would say, lean into that. And by that meaning, show up and see what you get out of it. As Nate said, the group is not a space where you are going to be bullied into speaking, talking, sharing, but you will be invited, right? We like to invite folks to come into the space and share. And there's always I'm good, I don't want to share, I just want to listen. That's respected. And so know that you're coming into a space of respect, especially because there's so many ways that we get disrespected as Black men. One of the things I want to make sure is that brothers feel respected in this space.
That's good.
And that you're coming into a space of brotherly love. And I don't really got to know you personally, but like human and human, there's just like love because you exist and you're in this space. And so I want to let brothers know who may be thinking about coming into a space where, they can work on some things, thinking about where in your life do you want to grow? What might you want to change? And can you put yourself in a space where you can learn and help others learn? Because there's a big part of the work that I see in groups where there's always learning happening. And as Nate said, we're not the end all be alls or the know it alls. I learn stuff from brothers every day in group. I mean, and I think that's the beauty of group that gets lost in individual therapy, right? You have the client therapist, and the therapist is often given this power, just because they're licensed folk. But in group, everybody brings their lived experiences, and all that is knowledge. And so, know that you're coming into a space where what you say matters. You may be in spaces outside of the group where people don't take you seriously, they don't really listen to you. This is not that space. This is the space where Nate and I are going to listen to you, but the other brothers in the group are going to listen to you. They may have some reactions like, yeah, me too, or might nod their head, or so you might have an experience where you feel like you're not alone. Shit, I'm not the only one that goes through this. Other brothers experience this too. And my hope is that you can come in and feel like you're amongst brothers, amongst family, and that you can work some things out.
Yep.
That's good. If you don't mind, real quick, I want to go back to something you said earlier, Nate, that really struck me. And I'm super curious. You talked about we don't expose, or we invite men into this. We invite men into therapy or something. Inviting versus exposing. What does that mean? Can you expound on it a little bit? That seemed like it was kind of heavy. I like that. I think.
Yeah. I thank you for picking up on that. But that's really rooted in the idea that again, a lot of the work that I do is centered around equity and breaking down systems of oppression and making them accessible to communities that have been historically disadvantaged. And so a lot of times you'll hear in the language of, hey, we expose these students to this, right? That always didn't sit well with me because it implies some sense of harm, right? Like, I'm going to expose you to this. You're going to get exposed if you come here. And I just never sat well with me, right? And so it's something called like deficit language. And for me, that fell under that category.
Yes.
And language is very important. And, this is something Ojore and I talk about all the time. But the words you use are very powerful. And so, I never say, hey, we introduce you to this, right? We invite you to this because, you come here of your own free will, right? And again, it's like so many times in these spaces, like brothers get harmed. And that's why I always harp on, the stigma around therapy. Like, I always question who says there's a stigma around therapy. And even if there is, like, what could it be for good reason? Because how many times do brothers come and get there, even go to the doctor and get harmed, right?
Yeah.
It's no secret that brothers have to, they're not believed when they say they're in pain. Like, the amount of suffering that we can take, whether it's true or not, right? Like, those are all things that we have to deal with. And that's why it's so important to really get clear on the language that we use, because that's just very, very important. And so I think this kind of along the lines of, a lot of times folks want to change in their lives and they only think about themselves. Like, oh, I did this and I did that. And, if I could only have been better here. But have you looked at the systems you're in and how you were conditioned to respond that way? And so, like, those are sort of the things that help people reframe and create language to show you don't exist in a vacuum, right? And so those are kind of the things that I mean of like being intentional about the language. And so that's kind of when I'm sharing, like we introduce, and it's not about exposing. That's kind of the element that I'm speaking to.
That's good. Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. What's coming up for you, Mike?
I wanted to follow up with Ojore and something we talked about last night. He mentioned it a little bit earlier, the idea of the sounds and the bowls and all that stuff that really speaks to you in the way that you want to, in my words, not yours, though, minister to people through your process. So if you could talk a little bit about what all that's about and why that's important to you.
Great question. I kind of want to answer it by blending in a piece of, as Nate was talking, because what he's talking about for me is in the ways that we start to decolonize this work. If we look at, how folks of African descent have been treated within these medical systems, right? Physical health, mental health, they haven't been great. We've been harmed a lot. And as therapists, we get this power just given to us because we're licensed folk. So in the room, I have a lot of power. And so one of the things I do, and shout out to the CBB program for helping me to be able to name this and work with it, is how do I share power in the room, right? And so one of the ways we do that is with language, right? So I'm not here to make you do anything. I can invite you. I can also let you know, like, hey, I'm thinking about this, or I'm thinking about going in this direction. Like, what do you think? Right. So having more of a collaborative spirit versus like, I'm the authoritarian in the room and you're going to do what I say because I know what's best for you. I tell folks all the time, you're the expert in you. I know some stuff about theories and process. So we can work together and collaborate. We can get, some good work, done. And so that brings me to this thing called sound healing and sound therapy that has changed my life in so many ways. And, once again, you find something that is for you. And so I don't know which one of my ancestors was working with sounds and vibrations, but I'm taking the torch. And so what happened for me was I was working with the local somatic therapist, and so that's working with the body, which is some good work. So, for brothers who may not be getting much out of talk therapy, sometimes working with the body can be, very helpful. And so this practitioner would, play these sound frequency tracks, and I'd be laying there kind of like processing all the emotions because a lot of stuff would come up. And I would see like, it's almost like Fantasia in my eyes. I'd see all these colors bouncing around, moving around like Mickey Mouse is in there doing this thing. And I would go on this like emotional roller coaster. And I was just like, man, that was kind of dope. And so, one day I bought a bowl and couldn't really play it. I sucked, to be honest. And then I decided to take a class. And I think, I really learned that it's okay to suck at some things and take a class and learn. And I found that me and sound healing really connected. There was something about connecting with these instruments that started to feel like I've been doing this already. And so that's when I'm like, okay, I'm tapping into ancestral medicine. And so, as I've learned more about the scientific part of sound, vibration, the instruments, and how it can help people to release, stuck, blocked energy in the physical body and all these different kind of body parts, like the the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, all these kind of parts of the body that in the energy world they talk about how stuff can be blocked or trapped in those areas, and the instruments help to release things, then to be able to bring in things. Because one of the things I find out is a lot of people hold on to a lot of stuff, and our thoughts are vibrations, our words are vibrations, our everything is in a constant state of vibration. So when we are vibrating in a good frequency, we're doing good, feeling good. But as soon as we start to get bombarded with like the stressors of life, relationships, prolonged stress, it decreases our frequency. And then over time, that turns into dis-ease, right, in certain parts of the body. And so these bowls really, I don't know, brothers, it's like, people have reported like colors, past life stuff going on, just being somewhere else, or, coming into insight, letting go of stuff they've been holding on to. And it was the instruments. I was the intermediary, right? I was just facilitating the process. And we don't have to talk a lot about it. It's not like a therapy session. And so it's just been this really intimate and just amazing, fun way to facilitate wellness. And I've been doing it for about 4 years. And if I could do this full time, I would do it. If I could have like a grant that would pay for my rent and all that, I would do it for free. Because I think one of the things that keeps me connected to this work too is there's not that many sound practitioners or therapists who look like me.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes they're white with the flowing outfit looking magical and things like that. And I mean, that's cool, but I want folks who look like me to be able to come and, experience sound healing, experience vocal toning, experience me playing the gong and the bowls around their body, on their body, experience the tuning forks, and not have to pay this arm and a leg because it's been commodified. This is ancestral medicine here. I mean, just like all these healing modalities, they've just been repackaged. And so a big part of my work that I've really been trying to get into is where do I need to decolonize my practice? And how do I make my practice accessible? Right. Yeah, I gotta eat, right? And I like I like some good stuff. But I want to be able to, make it affordable, because for me, it's not about the price tag. It's about helping people facilitate change, growth, healing for them, and doing it in a way that is it's just really, I just enjoy it. It's hard to put language to it. I can play the bowls and the gongs forever. And then to have somebody come and experience something helpful for them, that's payment enough for me.
That's good stuff. Wow.
Right. Wow. And that's what I wanted to get back to, because I think it even comes across through the stream, how it makes you feel, right? There's something about what the process does that is going to be a benefit of others, but it's also benefiting you. And so I think that's so important, because so often we don't put ourselves in a situation where we're going to try something that we're not going to be very good at. I joke with Jason, but he knows that I'm really a fan of his, because I remember when he first picked up the bagpipes, right? Kind enough to share online the sound of that screeching cat that he was making, trying to get his wind right so he could blow that bag and get a sound that came out right. And to see from that guy, and then watching graduation for the EMTs a couple weeks ago, when the whole group comes on stage and they are blowing and hitting the drums, and he's doing the pipe and drums core, and it's just amazing to see. But it means that you've got to be vulnerable to be bad at something until you get better at something. And so I wanted you to share that story, because that's the type of stuff that encourages and motivates folks to take a chance on something, right? You guys talked about time as a youth led to where you are now, and that's not a straight line.
Yeah.
Right. There were some detours along the way, and people that watch you at a certain point didn't necessarily expect that you were going to get to where you've ended up. I know the same is true for me. If people had seen me at one point, they were like, yeah, that dude will never be this dude that's walking around in 2025. But I think that's so crucial to understand. I'm willing to be bad at something so I can get better at something, so I can enjoy doing something that really is a benefit. Because you talking about the bowls and the sound therapy is exactly what Jason sounds like when he talks about the bagpipes and being out playing music together, and being proud of the fact that he can stand there and make a joyful noise, right?
Yes,
You know,
yes.
I videotaped him and sent the video. It's like, damn, we sound good. I'm like, yeah, y'all sound good. It's amazing. So I'm glad you got a chance to share that, Jason.
Yep, that's good. Well, just in the interest of time, and this was the fastest hour ever, and I feel like we can go on and on and on. And I think that's a testament. I think it's the testament to the commitment that you brothers have made to the field that you're in. I'm grateful that this is just the beginning. And as we talked about with Ojore yesterday, we're grateful to be able to support the things that you're doing. And we want more brothers to understand that there is a resource there, a space for them to go and feel and talk and to, process some of the things that they're going through and learn about how to do that. So I just, first, I want to thank those that pulled up, man. Thank you to Tyree. And
yes. Thank
Dante
you.
and Tony, Alonzo, Andre. I'm really grateful for y'all, man. Thank you, Jasmine and Antonio. Super, super grateful. Mark Vale, thank you, man. Appreciate y'all pulling up. And Yvette Porter Moore, super grateful for you. Cecil Shelton, thank you, Isaiah. Thanks for pulling up, man. You guys, it's awesome to see folks participate in the things that we do. Your support means a lot to us. And so I just want to thank everybody for being a part of this. And one thing we know about creating relationships is that if we're given more time, there'll be more opportunities for us to come together and go live and have some more of these conversations. But if you will, Nate, why don't you let the brothers know where they can pull up next week, and then we'll post the flyer in the comments of this, and we'll post it again. You guys can look at myself or Mike's Facebook or on the Brothers Y'all Good Facebook page to get the information as well. But Nate, why don't you let them know where they can go, and then we'll turn it over to you, Mike, to close out.
No, so next Tuesday, we meet the first Tuesday of every month. This Tuesday we'll meet on February 4th, and we meet every first Tuesday from 6:30 to about 8 o'clock. And the location is the Malcolm X Library, and that's located at 5148 Market Street. So again, we will be at 5148 Market Street, which is the Malcolm X Library, the first Tuesday of every month. So that'll be this Tuesday, February 4th, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. So we look forward to seeing you, Ojore and I.
Yes, sir.
We look forward to being in community with you all.
Absolutely.
Come through, pull up.
Yeah.
Get some stuff off your chest.
Yeah.
Leave it in the room. We'll clean it up.
Yeah.
I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
So let me do this. I try to end our sessions with prayer. I told Jason when we started this that this is a labor of love, part of an assignment that was put on my heart by my Lord and Savior, who said, do this thing. And we're going to talk more, Nate, because I know what it's like to be scared when something and go, I don't know how I'm going to do that. But Jason talked about it. It's having that faith to just kind of walk out there anyway. And so I told Jason when I started this, you're a man of faith, I'm a man of faith. I'm not going to spend my time streaming and not talk about my faith a little bit. And I think it'll be really dope that if we either start or end our podcast with prayer. So we've tried to end it with prayer. So I'm going to ask you, brothers, if you can bow your head. And Brother Jason, I'm going to ask you to lead us out.
Yeah. And so, as I said, I'm a Christian. And if it's not something that you do, it's okay. You ain't got to believe nothing to be in this space. Everybody needs to be healed no matter what. We just believe that this is an essential part of it. So, God, we just want to say thank you for this another day. Grateful to be alive. There's so much going on in the world today. Help us to remember that there are people that are going through things right now that we have no idea. They're trying to process all the stuff that's moving so fast in government and in their lives and on their jobs and navigating traffic on the freeway and gas prices and grocery prices and inflation and all this stuff, bad relationships and troubles with their children or with their parents and grandparents, deaths, lives are being born. People are going through a plethora of things, and help us to just be mindful of that Help us to be thoughtful of it. Help us to be intentional about thinking about the people are going through things that we just might not know what it is. So help us to practice a little patience as we're going about our day. Help us to leave a little bit earlier for work if we can, so that we don't have to be in a rush, so that our attitudes aren't affected, and help us to curb our appetites to want to spend and do things that we don't need to do. And I just want to pray specifically for this men's group on February 4th at Malcolm X Library, and for the brothers that are going to show up, and brothers that may not think it's for them, or they might think it's stupid and whatever. I want to challenge those brothers to see if they're wrong, and come and find out, get an answer to something that's going on with them. So I just pray for a challenge for a couple of brothers that might see this or might hear about it through somebody, that you would just give them the courage to show up. And thank you for Nate and for Ojore, what they're doing, trying to create value in the space of Black men, that routinely, when we do things that are specific for Black people, it always gets a railroad and it always becomes something else. So I pray that you would help them to continue to be steadfast and focused on what they're doing. So we pray for favor in their lives, and pray for health and for goodness and for wisdom and for deeper relationships. So thanks for creating this space. Thanks for giving us the opportunities. Thanks for being such a great dad. But most of all, thank you for the honor, the privilege, and responsibility that you've given to those of us that you call your own. We thank you in your name. Amen. Amen. Brothers, y'all good, man. Appreciate y'all being here. Ojore, I'm proud of you. As I said, Nate, man, I'm super grateful to meet you.
Thank you,
and
Mike.
I'm looking forward to shaking your hand, man, and give you that brother hug. And
yes, sir.
Thank you for your faith and your obedience, man. I love you. I appreciate you. And that's it.
I love you too, brother. Appreciate this opportunity, Mike. Thank you. Nate, thank you.
Yes, sir. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure.
No, and we will certainly have you guys back to talk more. Again, Jason and I are going to be hanging with y'all in person next week. So,
yes, sir. Looking forward to it.
Yet whether we're still going to try to get online or whether they're going to post something else in this space, but we don't want people to think that we don't care about what's going on. So we want to let you know where we're going to be. So if you want to see us, if you want to chat with us, you've got some advice for us, some comments for us, some suggestions for us. I saw somebody earlier saying, hey, how can I get on as a guest? How can I talk about something? So if you want to reach out to us, Jason's on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. You can email us as well as to brothersyallgood@gmail.com. We'll get at you and let you know what's really good. But we'll be hanging out with these two amazing brothers and finding out more about their journey, seeing other brothers and giving them a hug, that dap, that community, that brotherhood, that decolonized space for us to hang out in. So love you, brothers, so much. Can't wait to see you in a week. Thank you so much for being our guest on this podcast this evening.
Thank you too.
Thank you, brothers.
Right on. We love y'all, man.
All right.
Love you.
Love you too.
Too, man. Yeah.
So Jason, you gonna take us off live?